This is the ninth executive axiom, and I've designated this one by the name of build discretion into your organizational design. And this kind of goes along with the third executive axiom, which was control belongs to the worker. But it's a bit different. And hopefully you'll see the Venn diagram of the two. So I played golf in college, and one of the things that you did when you weren't in a meet was, you use a bunch of golf aids to help with your putting or your alignment, or, there were a whole series of things, and a lot of the stuff is videotaped today, so I guess you could consider that a golf aid. And then you also had a series of swing thoughts that you would, consciously practice. I'm going to take it back a little bit more inside because I've been taking it outside. If you're a golfer, you know what I'm talking about. But when you get on the course, it's a lot different. You can't be thinking about 50 different things while you're trying to shoot a score in a meet, or playing, some relatively serious golf. And so I limited my routine when I was in a meet to, visualizing the shot. I put a line on my golf ball to help with my putting or my alignment, on my shots, my drive or my putting, because you obviously can't pick up the ball when you're playing, when it's in play. But there were there was a limit to the amount of things that I could carry to the course with me, as far as swing thoughts. And they were usually around the things I just mentioned, and things like tempo, making sure I didn't get too quick on my swing. And those were my swing thoughts, and I limited them. Practice, totally different. Try 50 different things, and be thinking about a lot of different things. And this transfers over very well. It's a good analogy for employees. When they first start out, they need to be trained, and they need lots of structure associated with, learning products and services that you have. Maybe you have some type of problem solving type of regiment that you teach employees. But once you achieve, I'm going to say competency, but it could also be where more training of the type that you're getting won't do you good anymore. And that's why training really is very important, because you're kind of training to a specific set of skills that you need to gain in order to do the job. And if you train wrong at the beginning, I can tell you this from watching many golfers over the years, where maybe their dad helped them develop their swing, or somebody that was as incompetent as they were, maybe a little bit more competent. They get trained a certain way and not in a skilled way, and that can be very devastating, because once you've kind of got a habit of doing things, then you are consistently a bad golfer. And the same happens with a worker. And when you if they're brought up being trained wrong, then it's almost ceaseless. So training is important. So I guess my point here is I don't want to de-emphasize the importance of training and getting skills. And in those, maybe there's rules and processes and procedures and things of that sort, scripts that you kind of get a sense of. But what you want to achieve with workers is for them to be able to use discretion. And by discretion, I mean following principles instead of hard and fast rules that you'll find in scripts and procedures. and rules and policies and things of that sort. So people generally know what the right thing to do, but they have the freedom to use their own discretion around these principles. And in organizations, what is important to the customer is what what I develop is a customer creed, which is basically the principles of things that are important to customers. And when you're have a product or service, and you've gained the knowledge of that product or service, and you've gotten the skills that you need associated with problem solving, if that's part of what your organization does, which every organization does. The worker then begins to work to these principles because now they've kind of got the fundamentals down, so to speak. So just like the golf swing, I understand the basics of the swing, and now it's it's kind of the smaller group of things that I want in my routine when I'm out on the golf course. And so you want your workers to work to principles. So you get this discretion in working with principles. You are allowed some leeway, some flexibility with customers and with each other, in internal interactions, because you all know what kind of the principles are of the organization that are associated with what's important to the customer. And so this is the foundation that you build these principles off of, and then allow discretion around. And as opposed to constant, control over the procedures and the rules and the scripts and, all the things that are typically associated with organizations. And what you find is you get there's the sense of freedom with regards to employees and more engagement, because if they're making decisions about their own work where they have knowledge once they've been trained, and they have discretion working to certain principles that they've helped develop, now you've got something where people are their brains are engaged, as opposed to, well, what rule am I supposed to follow? What script am I supposed to follow? What process am I supposed to follow? That not everything is set in stone with regards to your design of your organization. And so this is one of the techniques that I use when I'm working with organizations, especially with business transformation types of things. Because in the end, what you're going to get, you'll get better customer service experience, better interactions with workers, because they all have a sense of what the principles are of the organization, and they understand that these are tied back to the customer. And so this is one of the reasons why, whether I'm working with executives or executive teams or doing business transformation, all to me begins with understanding what is important to customers by listening to them. And it's really kind of that easy, but it's also something that requires some effort, meaning moving yourself as an executive to the front line to help develop these principles and creeds, or more importantly, enabling those that have to use these principles to develop them on their own. You're steering, they're filling in the blanks, as opposed to dictating every control piece that you have out there. And, as I mentioned, in the end, by having the responsibility to design your organization and go through a method of gaining this type of knowledge at the front line. Again, this is not something that the executives totally fill in the blanks on, and that's where I think most executives go wrong, is they too much control, too much, well, they did it wrong, type of thing. Well, they did it wrong because they didn't have anything to do with what somebody else put together, typically from a support group. So employees, they'll achieve this freedom of discretion, using discretion, using principles that they can have some flexibility over. So that's what I wanted to cover this week. And remember, there is always a better way.